following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
It is really my honor to introduce a fine gentleman, a thoughtful leader, and just as they used to say in Latin, a mensch, Matt Goldstein.
Most of you know that the City University of New York is largely about our students. I mean, that's what I care mainly about. And today I'd like to quell for just a moment and tell you about a recent awardee, one of only 32 students that was honored by a Rhodes Scholarship this year. Her name is Zujaja Kautir. She's majoring in history and is part of a combined degree program that will lead to an MD. Welcome and congratulations. Just a very brief bio about Zujaja. She's born in Pakistan. Her family, she and her family were granted asylum in the United States. She began intensive research work in high school and still continues her high-level work on the neuroscience of autism and the history of Pakistan. Her extraordinary story is a quintessential CUNY story. Since the university has historically welcomed students across the globe and encouraged their aspirations. I'm delighted that she has joined us this morning, and I'd like to acknowledge her remarkable accomplishments, along with two former Rhodes Scholars. And we have them here with us today. Lev Shvirov, a Rhodes Scholar who just completed his doctorate at Oxford, and Lisette Nieves, a scholar from 1992. It's wonderful to have both of you here with us today. When I took a photograph with these three extraordinary people, I indicated that I'm going to bring the IQ down in that. So it's just indeed a pleasure to be in your company. All of us are deeply proud of our Rhodes Scholars. Their talents and their great potential are the reason that we began the Macaulay Honors College in 2001 and why we are so passionate about all of our colleges. Every student deserves and should get the chance to reap the economic benefits of a college degree. Higher lifetime earnings, better job security, and a better sense of who you are as part of this very complex world that we all live in. These opportunities have always been part of the historic promise of public higher education, but today that system is in uncharted waters. Across the country and here in New York, state support of public universities has been declining, at least for the past 2 decades. And as our recession has deepened, the situation has become more perilous. A recent study indicates that since 2008, at least 43 states have cut assistance to public colleges and universities or have made large increases in tuition, placing the burden on students off of the backs of state and local government. For example, the University of California has just increased its tuition by 40%, unprecedented. At that extraordinary system. State funding for the University of Washington has just been reduced by 26%. State of Michigan has cut financial aid by over 60%, and the Virginia Community College system has seen tuition jump by over 18%. Here in New York, our senior colleges have been reduced by over $200 million for the past 3 years. Our community colleges have lost a lot of money as well, resulting ultimately in reductions in our operating support of about 9.6%. And of course, our students are going to have to pay much higher tuition next year, as well as we had to do, unfortunately, this spring, where we imposed a 5% tuition increase. Looking forward, states will continue to face serious budget challenges. The fact is that other interests are demanding more state dollars, such as health care costs and social services for the poor, K through 12 education and corrections. This point was recently made by Peter Orszag, the former director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. In a New York Times editorial, he noted that as healthcare costs have risen, higher education has been rated. Government's general support for higher education 25 years ago, just 25 years ago, was nearly 50% greater than the state spending on Medicaid. That relationship has now flipped. Medicaid is spending about 50% more than support for higher education. And the recession has hit state coffers as well. A December New York Times article pointed out that many states have so much debt, what I would call off-balance sheet debt, several trillions of dollars worth, with much more coming in the years ahead. Financial analysts worry most about the long-term problems of a handful of states, and yes, New York State is one of that handful. As the article said, New York balanced its budget this year by shortchanging its pension fund and delayed payments to vendors and local governments. Next year will be much worse, as states and cities typically face their bigger budget deficits, and the recession officially ends as rainy day funds are depleted, including the federal stimulus money, which is to run out this summer. In addition, tax collections are not back to their pre-recession levels. The result? With funding decreases and tuition rising, public higher education is in a crisis mode. And let's not forget that the vast majority of college students, nearly 80% in these United States, attend public universities. It is imperative that we prioritize the crisis in public higher education. That's one reason that we hosted just several weeks ago a second summit on public higher education this past November. We brought here to New York the heads of the University of California, the University of Oregon, the University of Washington, University of Texas, Virginia, Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Connecticut, New York, and so forth. The overall message, if there was one commonality in that message, was that states are regressing away from supporting public higher education. Let's also remember that when we talk about budgets and financing, we're really talking about quality, the quality of the graduates we prepare, and the research we conduct. This is a time when we need more college graduates, educated at even higher levels than before. Instead, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we're losing ground. A joint National Academy study, an update to the well-known Gathering Storm report, has again called for improved education and research, especially in science and engineering. The update points out that the United States today ranks 20th in high school completion rates among industrialized nations and 16 in college completion rates. The United States ranks 27th among developed nations in the proportion of college students receiving undergraduate degrees in science and engineering. This, to me, is nothing less than a national security issue. Not that we're going to be bombed or we're going to be invaded, but our competitiveness is going to be so seriously undermined unless we produce people who can function in an economy that is unforgiving. You know, when I was a young kid growing up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, I probably could have just graduated high school and gone on to, you know, get a reasonable job and pay my rent and get married and have a family. I would never be rich, but I could get by. You can't do that today. You cannot do that today. And unless we wake up to that very basic fact, China is going to eat our lunch, India is going to eat our lunch. Travel around the world and see what is going on in the world. The huge investments that are being made in Eastern Europe, in Latin America, in East Asia and Asia, it is enormously unsettling. This is nothing more than time for action. This is a time for reimagining public higher education. How can we continue to meet the critical mission of educating our country's citizens without adequate public support? I do not pose that merely as a rhetorical question. It has to be dealt with and answered directly. As public higher education is squeezed out of its place in the funding line, public universities often turn to tuition to make up lost revenues, shifting, as I've said before, the burden from government to students. And we are going to be doing the same thing and have been doing the same thing, unfortunately, for years. We determined, and I addressed this group a couple of years ago, where we proposed a totally new way of financing public higher education. We affectionately called it the CUNY Compact. The Compact model finances or postulates a financing model which creates a partnership between government and the university, state and local governments, and the institution through working more productively and through philanthropy. I must say that philanthropy, for me, is going to be one of the keys that's going to have to drive this university ahead. And let me just give you an interesting statistic to show you how seriously we are taking this on. In 1999, approximately 11 years ago, this university, embarrassingly, was raising about $40 to $45 million a year. Today, we are now raising over $200 million a year, and that is not nearly enough. As state support pulls away from supporting the core business of this university, philanthropy is going to have to take a center role, and thinking about making the university a much more entrepreneurial place than it is today will have to take center stage. And let me talk about that second component, which I really haven't shared with you before, but is now part and parcel of the CUNY Compact model. The idea of the state assuming some responsibility, the student assuming some responsibility, the university assuming some responsibility, and friends of the university assuming some responsibility. Just as university researchers are engaged in inquiry that can lead to new commercialization, so too can university leaders engage in inquiry that might lead to new revenue streams. This is a time when the spirit of what if that drives our academic research must also drive our approach to financing. We must imagine a new way of financing public higher education. Universities must become incubators of new ideas, reorienting themselves to a new environment of institutional entrepreneurialism. For example, one area of opportunity is our real estate. Public-private partnerships offer incentives to all partners and can enable much-needed facilities expansions or upgrades. In the past, the way that we have constructed facilities was that the board, upon a recommendation by the Chancellor, creates opportunities for debt service that would be borne by the state of New York or in part by the city of New York, and that debt service would be the monies that we would pay to support bonds that are sold in the marketplace, and that we, from the proceeds of those bonds, we would construct facilities. But debt service is a burden. It's a burden on the state, it's a burden on the city, it's a burden on the university as well. We will have to continue to do it, but there are some ways that we can think more smartly. So let me describe for you certain things that is happening. Certainly across the country, universities have used such partnerships to build research facilities, student housing, medical schools, and other projects as well. For example, we have Jennifer Rapp here, the president of Hunter College, who worked with us in 2009 to put together a complex public-private partnership to create a new home for our Hunter College School of Social Work and our brand new School of Public Health, both now going to be situated in Harlem. This partnership has enabled an accelerated schedule for the project about 2 years ahead of time. 2 years is a lot of money. Getting something done 2 years faster than the marketplace typically would respond really can be monetized, and the sums are really quite significant. So this partnership enabled us to accelerate this project and create more flexibility in procurement, generating overall savings for the project of over 10%. For an urban campus like CUNY, public-private partnerships also offer opportunities to gain space where little available land exists for growth and development. If CUNY had the opportunity to have space, open land, can you imagine what we might be able to do? But we don't have open land, so we have to look at this as a constrained mathematical problem, and how do we generate a solution in this constrained space? A continuing challenge for us is not only finding space for research in classrooms, but also for faculty housing. If there is one area that makes me crazy, when I have great faculty from all over the country that want to come to CUNY, and we lose those faculty to NYU and Columbia, largely because we cannot provide the subsidies for faculty housing. We have not been able to solve that problem, but we are on track, and I think if we can be successful, we may be able to help solve the problem. As a result, we are working with developers to identify existing residential properties for that purpose. As a university, CUNY has some purchasing advantages, including exemptions from real estate tax, transfer taxes, and mortgage recording taxes, as well as access to tax-exempt financing. CUNY's concept would allow current residents in such facilities that we've identified to stay in their apartments. As units become available, CUNY would utilize them for faculty, staff, and administration. In addition, we'd like to make affordable housing available for New York City school teachers and other public employees such as firefighters and police officers. In this way, CUNY would advance the goals of affordable housing, develop faculty housing, and build up some revenue. I like that term, build up revenue, to feed into our growing endowment, enabling us ultimately to build a better public higher education system. Likewise, we hope that a public-private partnership, again, one built on incentives. CUNY Compact is about incentives, We play the game, and if we play the game, we create an incentive for somebody else to play the game. One of the incentives will enable us to gain space for CUNY's new community college, which I addressed this esteemed group last year. That college is going to open in 2012, the first new college in CUNY in decades. The new college reimagines the traditional community college structure in order to improve students' graduation rates and their career prospects. I'm very pleased that the founding president of our new community college officially began work this month and is with us today. Dr. Scott Evenbeck was recruited from Indiana University, Peru, and is a prominent expert on education assessment and initiatives to boost student success. Scott, you want to wave your hand and say, welcome, Scott, to New York. We're also pleased to welcome Frank Sanchez, who comes from the University of Colorado and has extensive experience in fostering student leadership and degree completion. I'm delighted to welcome here today. Where are you, Frank? Frank? Frank is not here. What a good way to start as one of my vice chancellors. I'm not going to the chancellor's speech. I have something better to do. I like independently minded people. But to find a home for this new community college in a crowded Manhattan landscape is not an easy task. But we believe that a project that will happen could utilize the site of the building now called North Hall on the John Jay College of Criminal Justice campus. John Jay and Jeremy Travis is here with us today, our president of John Jay College. We worked about 8 or 9 years ago on a brand new building, a phenomenal building for John Jay, and it's going to happen in the next year. When they move from North Hall, which is on 10th Avenue and 59th Street, we're going to propose a partnership with a private developer and retain a balance of that site for this new community college. We'll need to use some of it for John Jay and something else, but we'll be able to work out a deal, I believe, because that particular asset has such value that we can utilize that value, translate that value into the use of the new community college at a vastly reduced price than if we would go through the usual bonding procedures that we would have to do. And I'm really excited about a mixed-use building to be built by the developer, and the university, as I said, would own a portion of that building for this new community college. But real estate isn't the only area where possibilities for entrepreneurship exist for public universities. At CUNY, we must also avail ourselves of ideas and incubate multiple lines of inquiry that have potential for revenue. Consider, for example, that a couple of months ago, Amazon, and all of you know what Amazon is, the online retail reached a new milestone. It sold more e-books than paper books. As e-readers take firm hold in the marketplace, we are looking at them as one way to address the rising costs of textbooks. E-books are generally about 1/3 the cost of traditional textbooks. CUNY has initiated an innovative partnership with the New York City Department of Education and IBM to explore the use of e-books in K-12 classrooms. Next month, a pilot program will test the use of selected textbooks on Kindle readers with 9th graders at Stuyvesant High School. Course textbooks in world history, biology, and geometry will be downloaded onto readers used by each student. Eventually, CUNY will develop programs to supplement the e-textbook material and market them to school districts throughout the country. Why? Revenue. You're getting it. This is a good class. You're about a B+ at this point. Let's see if we can get you to get B and A. By fully utilizing available technology, the three partners, CUNY, IBM, and the DOE, will be able to hold down costs and offer students tools that will better prepare them for college-level work. In addition, many of you may have seen that last month, Mayor Bloomberg, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development Robert Steele, and New York City Economic Development Corporation President Seth Pinsky released a request for expression of interests, seeking responses from a university, applied science organization, or related institutions to develop and operate an applied science research facility in New York City. The city is looking to strengthen its applied science capability, particularly in the fields that lend themselves to commercialization, including quick job creation from innovation, something that is our core. Later today, we will, when I leave here, I'm initiating a conference call with the leaders of Columbia, Cooper Union, Mount Sinai, NYU, and Cornell to coordinate a response among all of these research organizations to see if we can mobilize the university communities in this city to respond to this request for interest. I offer, and I think that is the way to go, real partnerships, incentivizing, creating opportunities for leverage. Everything that I've said today is about that kind of an approach to financing the university. So I offer all of these ideas today as a stimulus for thinking. A few what-ifs in reimagining CUNY's finances and creating and building revenue streams. As in any robust research enterprise, many what-ifs are necessary. Some will fail, some will flourish. But big ideas that incentivize revenue creation are urgently needed, especially now as both governments and families struggle to regain ground. And let's not forget the most critical point. Securing the health of our public higher education system is essential to our state's and country's health. We desperately need the inventors, the creators, the entrepreneurs of the next generation. And not just a few, but an entire citizenry with the skills, knowledge, and drive to generate a constant flow of ideas. We need more new Zuzajas, Levs, and Lissettes, students who, given the opportunity to be challenged by a rigorous public education, are prepared to be the next global leaders. Last week, newly elected Governor Andrew Cuomo delivered his inaugural State of the State address and strongly enforced the idea that the way in which the state government is run has to change. We no longer can continue on the same course in this time of great fiscal exigency. In times of crisis, we must also be mindful of building for the future. What better way than to secure the intellectual capital needed in our rapidly transformed innovation economy than through education? As CUNY prepares to deal with its significant financial challenges, we must prepare the next generation of New Yorkers. And that means we must secure the core of this enterprise. We cannot gamble with the talent that will drive New York's competitiveness in the decades ahead. It's the most important investment all of us can make in this great city's and state's future. Thank you very much for being here.